Welcome back to the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast, the show for people who are ready to break out of survival mode in order to build a truly thriving life. I'm Amanda Solman, and along with Mark Jewell and the rest of my team here at Mark Jewell Speaking and Training, we break down common roadblocks that keep people stuck surviving and share ideas to help you thrive each and every day.
Guys, welcome to another short episode of the Survivor's Guide to Thriving. Today I'm going to dive into something that's been coming through for me a lot lately, and it's this whole concept of what you focus on, what you spend most of your time thinking about has a funny way of becoming reality. What do I mean by that? Well, let's think about it this way. The brain has this funny ability to focus in and see things that are familiar to it. And these kind of things tend to show up more in your life. The obvious example that we've all experienced is, you don't realize how many of, your certain type of vehicle there are until you buy one. So if you buy a Jeep Grand Cherokee, suddenly you're going to notice all the other Jeep Grand Cherokees that are out on the road. If you buy a Honda Accord, suddenly you're going to start seeing all the other Honda Accords. And when you don't have one, when you don't own one, when you're not commonly sitting in one, they're not that common. You probably just don't run into them quite as much. And so the brain has a funny way of focusing in and seeing the things that are really natural to it, that are really common, that are like it. So what's funny about in the brain, when we're experiencing dreams, when we're experiencing thought, inside the brain and our subconscious, we really don't know the difference between what's real and what's not real. And so what that means is if I'm constantly focusing, as an example, let's take an employee and they are not performing up to the standards that I've set, that I would like to see, etc. They're not pulling their weight in the way that I'd like to see them do it. And so what's really easy is to start focusing on all the things that are not adequate about that person. It's really easy to start to see all the things that aren't quite right and all the ways that they don't stack up. And so when you start to see those things and focus on those things in your mind, and you're having these imaginary conversations with that person about why they should know better, about why they should do better, about why they should be better, etc., when you start having those conversations with yourself in your mind, the brain doesn't know the difference between that being real and that being just a story that's going on in your head. And so here's what's funny. Guess what? As soon as you start to focus on those things and they're real in your mind about why that person isn't holding up their end of the deal, or they're not performing to the expectations that you at least have in your mind, you're going to start to see them in reality. You're going to start to see them more and more. And it's not that they're not performing. It's or it's not that they are, and you're just making up a story about something that's not really real about them, but you're going to start to focus and start to draw out all of those things about that person that you don't like. Now, on the flip side, on the positive side of this, if I have a positive story about that employee or about that person, then I'm going to start to see more and more of the things that I want to see, that I do like about that person. It's really easy when we get stuck in a negative story about someone, something, some market, some way, whatever. It's really easy to see all the things that we don't like about it. When we start to get on a positive story, it's really easy to overlook the flaws of that person, that place, that thing, that story, whatever. So here's some actionable things that you can do, or at least one actionable thing that you can do right away to start to reframe the story. And if you've been through one of my live events, you get to learn the story framework and how it works and how to instantly reframe the story that you have going on about a person, about a customer, about an event, about something going on in your life at whatever level. But the easiest thing to do is to just pause before you get together with this person for your next meeting, before you sit down for their performance review, before you spend any more time or waste any more time thinking about or dreading this person's presence in your life. Write down 1, 2, maybe 3 if you can find it, things that are actually positive, and suspend your own judgment, suspend your own belief for just a minute. And can you find just like one or two or maybe even three positive aspects of this person? Maybe they have a nice smile, like they never show up on time, but they've got a nice smile. They're polite and friendly. Maybe they hold doors open for people. Maybe there's that one process or task that they do a really good job of from time to time. Can you just focus in on like one or two or maybe even three positive aspects and write that down on a sticky note, put that into a list, write it on the notes of your phone, whatever it is, and make a point to see that in them today. Make a point to see what is good, one good thing, two good things, maybe three good things about that person. And here's what's funny. As soon as you start to focus on the real story, in fact, you may even choose to have an imaginary conversation with them in your head ahead of time, talking about, hey, I really appreciate the way you do this, or when you do this, it really makes my day go better, or when this happens, etc., 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 positive result. Right? So when you have that little bit of a conversation with somebody, suddenly you will start to feel a little bit better and maybe a little bit different. And you may start to notice that behavior again and again and again. And here's the benefit. When you have that conversation with that person, when you talk with them about that thing or whatever it is, it impacts them in that positive way. Your positive thought energy starts to impact them in a way that actually benefits them. And what's interesting is, you never really know what somebody is going through. You don't really know why is it they, struggle to show up on time. Why is it they struggle to stay focused or on task, or they're not as productive as I need them to be? Why do they lack certainty, confidence, significance, connection, whatever it is in the workplace that you'd love them to have more of? What's the struggle? We don't always know. But what we do know is that when you start to input some of that positivity and some of that positive, that really good, positive constructiveness into their life, it has a positive impact that can start to impact the other areas of their life. Never discount the value that you have in just lending someone a compliment, because you never know what they are going through on an individual basis at work, at home, or somewhere else in their life. So we start to tell a little bit different story. And what's funny is that just sometimes it starts to get that snowball rolling downhill, moving in the right direction. Now, here's something else that I'll have you consider is that making those small investments in those people, especially in employees, earns you in a lot of ways some of that relationship equity that can then be leveraged when it does come time to coach them on a behavior. But so often, you guys, we see leaders that are only having conversations with their people when it's time to get better. We're so often only having conversations with our employees when they screw up or when we catch them doing something wrong. It's kind of like, if they're doing it right, don't mess with it, right? But the reality is what we want to do is we want to start catching people in the act of being great more often. You as a leader get into the habit of catching people doing things correctly, doing things well, doing that job better than you could do it, and then praising them for that as much as you can stand it. And if you can't stand it at all, then it's time to level up. You've got work to do too. But I want you to consider this, that making those investments on a daily basis and getting in the habit and doing the work and investing in that to build that relationship equity with those people is far more valuable even outside of work than you ever even considered. And maybe you're not that leader yet. Maybe you don't have that title. Maybe you don't have that positional authority. Start doing it anyway. You don't know what your boss is going through. You don't know what your manager is going through. You don't know what your CEO is going through. So continue to pour greatness into others, because you'll never know the value that it can have as it impacts them and the equity that it builds in your relationship, so that when it comes time to ask for something, or when it comes time to do something different, when it comes time to maybe even seek promotion or whatever the case may be, you've got some relationship equity that you can capitalize on. So my friends, what you focus on tends to become real. What you spend most of the time focusing on tends to become real. So if you're focused on all the negative aspects of a person, place, or thing, you're going to continue seeing more of the negative aspects. If you start to focus in on those things that are positive, even if it's just one or two, watch that snowball start to roll downhill as the story gets better and better and better. Your action item right now is to go find one person who's been driving you crazy, one person who just seems to always let you down. I want you to find one thing with them today and go give them a compliment on that one thing and just see what happens. Survival's dead, my friends. It's your time to thrive today. Let's go get it.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. If you like what you heard, make sure to jump over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. We appreciate the feedback, and it helps other people find the show. On that same note, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with a friend. As always, if you're looking for more resources to go from surviving to thriving, check out our website at www.markjewelltraining.com. That's Jewell with 2 L's. And you can find us under Mark Jewell Speaking and Training on all the major social networks. Remember, survival is dead. It's your time to thrive today. See you next week.